Hi folks, Dave, the Honest Audiophile. This is the BQEYZ Autumn, and these are my Honest Audiophile impressions. I want to thank BQEYZ for sending over the Autumn for review. Do greatly appreciate it. BQEYZ, you rock. Alright, so if I'm saying BQEYZ wrong, please correct me in the comments. And the only thing I could think that it is supposed to sound like or be pronounced is because. Didn't really make sense to me though, so if I'm wrong, please let me know down in the comments. All right, anyways, the Autumn. This is a $200 IEM. Has a 13mm dynamic driver, 46 ohms of impedance, 110 decibels of sensitivity, and 7 Hz to 40 kilohertz of frequency response. Comes in this nice little box. Got some specs on the back, a little bit of information. Okay, let's move on. Accessories. You get this nice little carrying case. It says BQEYZ or because. And pretty standard case. Get a little cleaning tool. 2 different types of tips. Small, medium, and large in each. You get these little itty bitty things, which are wide bore. And then you get the more standard cone shape, which are kind of wide bore, not quite as wide as the smaller ones. You also get a little aluminum plate that says the Autumn on it, and then has filters, bass, normal, and treble. And you get this little cleaning tool, which has magnets on both sides. And boom, it just pulls off. Oh. Dave, you pulled both of them off at the same time. Not doing good. Alright, so they're magnetized. I could play with this for hours. If you like magnets, that's the only reason you should get this whole little device, is because it's so cool and fun to play with. Anyways, you've got bass filter, normal filter, treble filter. All right. Very easy to lose, so be careful about that. And you also get your IEM. Very nice cable. You can get it in different terminations, 2.5, 3.5, 4.4. Has very good ear hooks, exceptionally well built and exceptionally good control. Connects with a 2-pin. Has a slight wing. And it's a little bit chunky body, but not too bad. A little bit of an angle. Extremely short nozzle angle. It's just, I just wish it was longer. Goes into the ear and it barely fits for me. It's like almost not inserting far enough. They feel kind of loose. I have a good seal, but they just feel like they may fall out. Also, you get a little bit of bass flex. So if you're a little sensitive to that, beware, these do give you some bass flex. With the wide bore tips, that insertion in is even looser for me. I could not wear the wide bores because I was afraid that they were just going to fall out. With the cone-shaped ones, they do fit a little bit better, but it's still not the greatest fit. This is a very shallow fitting IEM, and I have trouble with those type of IEMs. Seal was good, it just didn't feel comfortable in my ear. I was able to wear it for about an hour before it really started to get fatiguing for me. Your experience may be different, but for me, about an hour was about all I could handle. And then that fit was just scary. I just thought it was going to fall out. All right. You see that little gold speck? That's the filter. So you take your little tool, and it just pops right off, pops right in, and you can swap it easy enough. Unlike all the other IEMs that have filters where you have to take the tip off and either unscrew the very top of the nozzle or the whole nozzle, put your tip back on, with the BQEYZ Odom, it literally takes like, takes like 10 seconds and you're done. Very easy. All right, so build, awesome. Design, awesome. Fit, not so good. Comfort, it's all right. Do the filters make a difference? So that's going to be one of the first questions that people ask. And yes, they definitely do. So bass does what it's supposed to, and treble does what it's supposed to. And normal is balanced, and normal is my preferred. So all sound impressions will be done using the normal filter. So the bass filter, it definitely brings in some sub-bass extension, and it definitely adds sub-bass and mid-bass presence and just impact. You just get a whole lot of body, a whole lot of girth to the bass. It's almost borderline dominant, but it's also fun and engaging, and it stays fairly well controlled. It's still a competent bass, and I do enjoy it, but it bleeds into the lower mids region and adds a fullness to it, and it adds a lushness and a warmth to the mids, and then it tames down the upper mids and lower treble region, but it seems to make it into a darker IEM, and you kind of lose a little bit of just the overall airiness. It almost sounds a little stuffy. Treble. The treble filter pretty much turns the bass into a linear bass, and you just lose all warmth, you lose body, you lose authority, and it becomes all details and clarity, and you really don't have much impact whatsoever in the bass. And then the upper mids and treble region become very elevated, and they become aggressive and too forward, and you end up with a lot of brightness, sibilance, and sharpness and hotness. Get a wider soundstage, but it tends to lose some of the depth and the layering abilities. So I use the normal balanced filters. You can use them without the filters. I do not recommend that whatsoever, because the treble filter wasn't tolerable for me, and without the filters in at all, it became even more treble filter. All right, so how do they sound? The bass of the Odom is a fun bass. It has a more mid-bass focus than sub-bass and mid-bass focus. It's a very girthy, lots of impact, good power to it, and it's a very engaging bass, but it is mid-bass focused. The sub-bass kind of takes a back seat, and it is rolled off, so you don't really get a whole lot of rumble and grumble down in that area, and it's just kind of every now and then makes an appearance, but it's kind of lackluster when it does. Whereas the mid bass is right there. It's aggressive and fun and pounding, but it stays controlled. Has good details and a good tone to it. The resolution is okay, but the Odom is a little bit more quantity focused than quality focused. The upper bass does roll into the lower mids slightly, adds a little bit of body and a little bit of warmth to the overall presentation. And I find that the mids of the Odom are very pleasing. They have a kind of romantic side to them, a lush, warmer side. And it's a very appealing fullness to the mids. They have a naturalism about them, and everything just sounds like it should. Going into the upper mids, it is elevated, and it has a 3 to 5K peak that is a little too much. It's just enough to annoy, but not enough to make me hate it. It's just enough to be like, okay, that could have been tamed down just slightly. and it kind of throws off the cohesion of the mids. So the bottom end of the mids and the main mids are nice and smooth and balanced and play well together, have that nice warmthness, and then the upper mids come in and they're a little bit too in your face, a little too aggressive, and they're thinned out and lean. And so instruments like pianos will sound better on the lower end octaves and mid octaves, and when you get into the higher octaves, they become a little leaner and a little bit more harsh, and they just don't sound quite realistic. Going into the treble also is elevated, especially at 8K and 12K and a little bit beyond. It's a little bit lumpy in the treble, and those peaks are noticeable, and it can be a little bit on the fatiguing side. Has a little bit too much sparkle and energy at times, and I just find that it's an okay treble, but it has those moments of, I wish that it was a little bit more smooth and a little bit more natural sounding. Soundstage is about just around average, maybe a little bit more. It's not the widest sounding soundstage, but it has enough to not sound claustrophobic. But it does something that is kind of a bugaboo for me, and that is it tries to make everything sound big. Every venue, every single track has to be wide, according to these, as wide as they will go. It doesn't do a good job of transitioning to whatever size venue. So if you're in a large stadium, it sounds good. But if you move into a small studio or jazz club type of setting, it tends to be still kind of forcing things and trying to stretch it to be a little bit wider than it should be. Also, depth and layering is okay. It's not the greatest at it. It does get muddled on busier tracks, and it tends to lose cohesion, and things kind of sound confused and kind of will merge together, and you'll become a little bit one-notish in the bass on busier tracks. Imaging is okay. It's not the greatest, but it does travel across the stage, and you can place things. It's kind of over here, over here, over here, over there, but it's not pinpoint precise. Overall, I find that the Odom is a good IEM. It's not a favorite IEM of mine, but it's not something that I'm never going to listen to again. The Odom is pleasing sounding, and it does a lot right, but it does miss on a few points. Upper mids and treble especially, and also in resolution. Detail retrieval and resolution are not its strong point. It is not the most detailed IEM, and also tone and timbre are okay. It has a naturalism to it in the tone, but timbre tends to be a little bit, every now and then you can't quite tell differences in instruments, or it'll kind of cluster things together, so that makes it a little bit hard. You'll be able to tell whether or not something's a woodwind or a string, or if it's an acoustical guitar or an electric guitar or things like that. But sometimes when there's multiples of woodwinds or multiples of brass playing, you can't differentiate between those type of instruments within the same. So overall, I really do like the Odom, but for the price tag, I would prefer to pick up the Moondrop Kato. I just find that the Kato is the more complete sounding IEM. The Kato has the better tone and timbre, has the more accurate just overall natural sound, has better detail retrieval and resolution, and it has a wider soundstage, better depth and layering, and does a better job with imaging and is more precise. In my opinion, the Moondrop Kato is the more complete IEM, and it has a more accurate and true representation. Comparing it to the iKKO OH10, the iKKO OH10 is more V-shaped and more aggressive sounding. Definitely has more bass, definitely has more presence, more impact, but it is more V-shaped. And also the OH10 is more aggressive in the upper mids and in the treble, and is more piercing and just more fatiguing. Even though the OH10 has a better soundstage and does better with detail retrieval and resolution, in my opinion, it's not as well resolved as the Odom. So if you find that the OH10 is more aggressive and is too aggressive for you and a little too V-shaped, the Odom may be something that you go for if you do still want a lot of that bass impact. But if you're looking for an IEM that is better than both of those, the iKKO. It's been Dave, the Honest Audiophile. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video. Speaking of next video, somewhere on screen, subscription links and notification bells. If you haven't already, don't forget to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down to the video. Check out the links down below for all kinds of information regarding how you can contact the channel, follow the channel, support the channel, and all kinds of other things like music recommendations and gear lists and tier lists and all kinds of other things. So check out the links down below, and then don't forget to enjoy the music, and that honesty is the best policy.